The human soldier sat in the cold chamber of the alien ship, his hands bound by heavy chains that glowed faintly with strange energy. The room around him was filled with tall figures covered in silver armor. Their glowing eyes watched him with amusement, their sharp teeth flashing every time they laughed. They called him weak. They called him soft. They called him nothing but a fragile creature from a small blue planet. He kept his head lowered, his body bruised and dirty, but his eyes stayed sharp and alive. He did not shout. He did not beg. He did not cry. Instead, he breathed slowly, steady and calm, as if the chains were nothing, as if the mocking words around him could not pierce his mind. The aliens thought they had broken him, yet they could not see the fire that still lived inside him. The chamber was large and filled with strange symbols across the walls. Alien lights blinked in colors unknown to Earth. Strange sounds hummed through the air like a living machine. The guards carried long weapons shaped like spears with glowing edges. They slammed them against the floor in rhythm, as if celebrating their victory over the captured human. They laughed louder, calling him an animal caught in a cage. One alien stepped forward, taller than the rest, his armor brighter, his voice heavier. He looked down at the soldier and spoke to the others. He said that humans were weak creatures, easy to hunt, easy to capture, unworthy of respect. He said the soldier was proof that Earth was nothing but dust in the path of the Empire. The guards cheered, their laughter echoing like thunder in the chamber. The soldier raised his head just slightly, his eyes cold, his lips pressed tight. He did not speak, but the silence made the alien leader pause for a moment. It was not fear he saw. It was not surrender. It was something else, something hidden behind human eyes. But the alien brushed it away and returned to mocking words, calling the soldier a broken toy. They pushed the soldier to his knees, chains rattling as he fell. The guards kicked him, laughing when he stumbled. One poured strange liquid from a container over his head. A burning sting filled his skin. But he stayed silent, his body strong even as pain spread. He refused to give them the satisfaction of weakness. The aliens grew louder in their mockery, certain that humans could never resist their power. Inside his mind, the soldier thought of his training, the endless hours under harsh sun, the weight of packs on his back, the cold nights when sleep was stolen by duty, the battles on Earth where survival was the only teacher. He thought of his comrades, of the faces of those who fought beside him, of the promise to never give up. He thought of the oath he made, to stand strong even in chains, even in darkness. The aliens did not know what it meant to be human. They did not know the strength born from struggle. They did not know the fire that came from loss and sacrifice. They saw only flesh and bone, soft and weak compared to their armored forms. They believed technology made them untouchable. They believed their empire had crushed all spirit from the worlds they conquered. They believed humans would break just the same, yet the soldier gave them nothing to confirm their pride. More aliens entered the chamber, officers in darker armor, carrying strange glowing tablets. They recorded the human as if he were a specimen. They whispered among themselves, laughing at how small his frame looked compared to them. They joked that humans were no threat, that the soldier would soon beg for mercy. But when they looked into his eyes, they found only silence, and that silence unsettled them, though they did not admit it. The leader circled him slowly, claws tapping against the floor, asking why humans resisted, asking why Earth fought back, asking why they did not kneel. The soldier said nothing, his lips pressed in a hard line, his silence louder than any scream. The aliens grew angry, their laughter mixing with irritation. They wanted him to break. They wanted him to cry out, but he gave them nothing, and this nothing began to feel heavier than chains. One guard leaned close, his breath hot and foul. He whispered insults in human tongue. Words learned to cut deep. He said Earth would burn. He said humanity would be erased. He said the soldier would watch his kind perish. But even then the human gave no reaction. He looked forward with steady eyes, unshaken, unbroken, a living defiance in silence. The chamber fell into uneasy quiet for a moment. The guards shifted, their laughter weaker now. The leader snarled and ordered them to drag the human to the main hall, where commanders of the fleet would see him. They pulled him up by the chains. The sound of metal scraping echoed through the corridor. The soldier walked without resistance, yet every step was measured, strong, not broken. The aliens did not notice the way his eyes scanned every wall, every weapon, every guard, studying, remembering, waiting. As they led him through the alien ship, he saw the vast size of their empire's craft, corridors lined with glowing veins of energy, doors that opened like living mouths, soldiers in ranks that seemed endless, Yet he did not look away in fear. He looked with focus. He absorbed every detail, his soldier's mind always at work, always preparing. Even in chains, even mocked. The guards laughed again, one saying this human was like a pet dragged to a master, another saying he would entertain the commanders before being discarded. Their words meant to humiliate him, but his silence made their voices sound hollow, their pride echoing against walls that hid his growing strength, his unbroken will. The alien ship shook slightly as engines roared, the sound like thunder around them. But the human did not stumble. He walked steady, his gaze fixed forward, his silence cutting to the laughter around him, his mind sharp, his spirit strong, his body scarred yet unyielding. This was not the face of defeat, though the aliens were too blind to see it. They dragged him into the grand hall, vast and filled with rows of alien commanders, banners of the Empire hanging from the walls, the air heavy with arrogance. The guards pushed him to the center, chains rattling, laughter rising again. The commanders looked down from high seats, their glowing eyes full of scorn. They expected a broken creature, but what they saw was something else, though they did not yet understand it. The human soldier stood in the center of their power, silent, chained, mocked, yet unshaken, and deep inside he carried the strength of his kind, the fire that no chain could hold, the courage that no mockery could crush, the spirit that no alien empire could erase. And though the aliens believed they had already won, they would soon learn how wrong they were. For silence is not weakness, and patience is not surrender. And the human soldier was waiting, always waiting for the moment to show them what it truly meant to face humanity. The human soldier stood in the grand hall, his chains rattling softly with each movement of the alien guards around him. The hall stretched wide and tall with walls covered in banners that shimmered with strange light. The air smelled of smoke and metal. A sound like humming thunder filled the chamber as alien machines pulsed in the corners. Rows of armored commanders sat on raised platforms, their glowing eyes fixed on the single human prisoner who stood before them. Their laughter rolled across the hall like waves, sharp and cruel, heavy with pride and arrogance. The tallest commander leaned forward, his armor carved with jagged lines of gold. His voice carried deep echoes as he spoke to gathered soldiers. He told them that humans were soft beings, weak and fragile compared to the power of the Empire. He declared that this prisoner was proof that Earth had no true warriors, no true strength, only desperate creatures clinging to a broken world. The commanders nodded, their claws tapping the stone floor, their laughter cutting the air as if celebrating a victory that had not yet ended. The guards pushed the soldier to his knees once again, forcing him low as the commanders watched. One of them rose and walked closer, holding a staff glowing with fire at the tip. He pointed at the soldier and told the others that humans were not enemies but entertainment, nothing more than fragile toys to be studied and discarded. The hall erupted with more mocking laughter. The walls themselves seemed to carry the sound, a storm of arrogance that pressed down heavy on the prisoner. But the soldier did not bow his head. He lifted his face slowly, his eyes calm, his silence burning louder than any words. The commanders noticed and grew restless. They did not expect resistance and silence. They expected fear, begging, breaking, but what they saw was different. And though they hid behind cruel laughter, a seed of doubt began to grow inside their proud minds. The alien leader raised his arms and ordered the display to begin. Massive screens lit up across the hall, showing images of Earth, burning cities, smoke rising, alien ships hovering above oceans and mountains. The commanders roared with pride, pointing at the destruction they had caused. They mocked the soldier again, asking if he recognized his dying world, asking if he saw how powerless humans were, asking if he understood that no resistance could survive against such force. Their words were sharp, their laughter cruel, but the soldier remained still, his breathing steady, his eyes unbroken. The silence was heavier now. It pressed against their pride. It made their words feel smaller. The commanders grew louder, forcing more insults into the air. But the human did not answer, and this angered them. They wanted to crush his spirit completely. They wanted him to admit weakness, to scream in despair, but he refused, and his refusal was like a mirror reflecting their pride back at them, showing cracks they did not want to see. One commander struck the soldier with the butt of his weapon. The sound of metal against flesh echoed. The guards laughed louder, but the human did not cry out. He stayed firm, his eyes locked on the leader above. This unsettled them more than any scream could. They began to whisper among themselves. Some saying the human was broken beyond feeling. Others say he was stubborn and dangerous, yet all of them still wrapped themselves in pride, unable to admit that fear was beginning to rise in their own hearts. The leader spoke again, louder and sharper. He declared that no human had ever stood against the Empire, that no world had survived their conquest, that the soldier was nothing but dust beneath their boots, his words filled with venom and arrogance. Yet even as he spoke, his eyes flickered with doubt. From the silence of the soldier there was something strange, something powerful, something that unsettled the order of the hall. The soldier looked around slowly, his eyes moving across every banner, every weapon, every glowing screen, his gaze calm but sharp. He was not only watching, he was studying. He was learning the rhythm of their pride, the pattern of their arrogance. He saw how they believed laughter made them stronger, how they believed pride made them invincible, and he held that knowledge quietly inside him like a hidden weapon waiting to be used. The commanders rose one by one, each speaking, each mocking, their voices clashing the air like blades. They spoke of battles won, of worlds broken, of humans enslaved. They shouted of glory, their pride overflowing. But the louder they grew, the quieter the soldier seemed, his silence cutting deeper than words, his calm becoming heavier than their shouting, until their laughter began to sound hollow even to themselves. One alien commander leaned close to the human, his glowing eyes searching the face of the prisoner. He whispered with a cruel grin that humanity was nothing but prey, weak prey hunted by stronger beings, prey that could never fight back. But as he spoke, the soldier stared back with steady eyes, unflinching, unafraid, and in that stare the commander felt a tremor of something unfamiliar, not weakness, not fear, but strength, a strength that could not be explained, a strength that pride could not erase. The hall grew restless, the laughter now uneven, the whispers growing louder. The leader slammed his staff to silence them, declaring that the human would be paraded to the Empire as proof of their dominance, a living trophy of their power. The commanders cheered again. Though the sound carried less weight than before, the soldier still stood, chained yet unbroken, his silence louder than their pride, his calm cutting through their arrogance like a blade unseen. As the guards pulled him back, dragging him from the center of the hall, the soldiers and commanders continued to mock, yet inside their laughter there was unease. They could not explain why the silence of one human soldier unsettled them, why his calm made their pride feel thin, why their empire of arrogance seemed less solid under his quiet gaze. But they would not admit it, for pride was their shield, pride was their weapon, pride was their weakness. The human walked as they dragged him, his step steady, his chains heavy, but his spirit unbroken, his eyes alive. The guards laughed and shoved him forward. Yet every laugh sounded weakened before. Every insult fell flat against his silence. He carried no weapon, no armor, no army. Yet he carried something greater, something the aliens did not understand, something they would soon learn. For silence is not defeat, and pride is not strength, and the Empire had just revealed its first crack. The human soldier sat once again inside the cold chamber of the alien ship, chains locked around his wrists and ankles, guards standing nearby with weapons ready. Their glowing eyes filled with arrogance. They thought they had broken him. They thought silence meant defeat. Yet the human remained calm, his breathing steady, his gaze sharp. Inside his mind the memories of Earth returned, rising like flames that could not be put out. He remembered the endless training grounds where he had once stood with fellow soldiers, the burning sun beating down on their backs as they carried heavy packs across the fields, sweat pouring, muscles aching, yet never allowed to stop, their commanders shouting that pain was only weakness leaving the body, their voices carving discipline deep into young hearts. And he had endured, he had survived, he had grown stronger each day. While many had fallen, he had risen, forged by suffering into. Still, the aliens could not see this history written in his scars. They mocked his frame as fragile. Yet every scar was a lesson, every wound a victory, every hardship a story of survival. They thought strength was only in armor and weapons. But the soldier knew strength was in spirit, in the will to stand even when the body begged to fall, in the courage to keep fighting when the odds screamed surrender. This was a hidden fire of humanity, unseen by those who judged only the surface. He thought of nights in the frozen wilderness where the wind howled like wolves, his body shaking from cold, yet his mind refusing to break. He thought of hunger that clawed his stomach, weeks when food was scarce, yet he pushed forward, step by step, refusing to bow, refusing to stop. He thought of battles where friends fell one by one, the sky raining fire, Yet he carried them from the field, refusing to let death take them without honor, his heart heavy with grief yet strong with duty. These memories burned bright as the aliens laughed around him, their voices like knives, but knives that could not cut him, for he was forged in fire, born in struggle, tempered in pain, and nothing they said could erase what he had become. Nothing they did could erase the will that had grown inside him like iron, silent yet unbreakable, unseen yet unstoppable. One guard approached and sneered, asking why the human stayed quiet, why he did not beg, why he did not curse. The soldier raised his head slowly, his eyes calm but sharp. He did not speak, but in his gaze was a storm, a fire, a strength hidden yet alive. The guard felt a chill, though he did not understand why. He turned away quickly, laughing to cover his unease, but his laughter sounded hollow, thin, weak. The soldier lowered his eyes again, his mind still working, studying every detail of the chamber, the position of guards, the rhythm of their steps, the weight of his chains, the edges of weapons. Every small thing stored inside his memory, every weakness noted, every detail becoming a part of his silent plan. While the aliens mocked, he prepared. While they laughed, he studied. While they believed him broken, he grew sharper. He remembered his commanders telling him that silence was a weapon, patience was a blade, timing was a key to survival, and he carried those lessons within him, waiting for the right moment, knowing that strength was not always in striking first, but in striking when the enemy least expected, in turning arrogance against itself, in using their pride as a blindfold that would hide their own weakness from their sight. The aliens spoke of their empire, boasting of worlds conquered, of species crushed, of victories unending, their pride filling the chamber like smoke, thick and choking. But the soldier breathed calmly, his silence cutting to their arrogance, his spirit unshaken. He remembered battles where enemies thought him weak, enemies who underestimated him. And he remembered how those enemies fell, one after another, their pride their downfall, their arrogance their death. The chamber lights flickered, alien machines humming around him, strange shadows crawling across the walls. Yet the soldier did not fear, for he had seen darker nights, harsher storms, deadlier enemies. Nothing here was greater than the hardships he had faced before. Nothing here could erase the strength forged in his blood, the hidden fire that burned brighter than chains, brighter than mockery, brighter than the Empire's pride. He thought of his family back on Earth, the faces of loved ones waiting, their hopes carried by soldiers like him, their dreams resting on his strength. He thought of comrades who had fallen, their voices now silent but their memory alive within him. He thought of promises made, to protect, to endure, to never surrender, and those promises wrapped around him like armor, unseen but stronger than steel, giving him strength that no alien could measure, strength that no empire could destroy. The guards grew restless, their laughter fading into murmurs, some glancing at the soldier with unease, wondering why he did not tremble, why he did not break, wondering what gave him such calm even in chains. They could not understand, for they had never known true struggle. They had never lived through fire without shelter. They had never carried pain without relief. Their strength was given by machines, by empire, by pride. But his strength was born from survival, born from humanity's endless will to endure. One commander entered the chamber, his armor heavy, his presence sharp. He looked at the soldier with contempt, calling him broken, calling him worthless. Yet even he felt unsettled when a human raised his eyes that carried no fear, no surrender, only silence that spoke louder than words, silence that told of storms endured, of fire survived, of battles won, silence that promised strength hidden deep, waiting, watching, unyielding. The commander struck the soldier across the face, the sound echoing. The guards laughed again, but the soldier only turned his head slowly back to meet the alien's eyes, his calm unshaken, his spirit unbroken, his silence unbroken. And for the first time, the commander felt anger mixed with fear, though he would never admit it. He stepped back, growling, ordering the guards to increase the chains. But no chain could hold the fire inside the human. No weight could crush the strength that lived within. The soldier sat quietly as they tightened his bonds, the metal biting deeper into his skin. Yet he did not cry out. He only breathed steady, his eyes sharp, his mind alive, his strength hidden but waiting. He knew his time was not yet here, but it was coming. Every insult, every strike, every chain only fed the fire within, only sharpened the blade of the spirit, only prepared him for the moment when silence would end and strength would rise. The aliens laughed again, their voices hollow. their pride echoing, their arrogance blind. They thought they had conquered him. They thought he was weak. They thought his silence was surrender. But they were wrong. For the human soldier was no broken toy. He was no fragile creature. He was a storm in chains, a fire hidden in silence, a warrior forged in pain. And his strength was waiting, always waiting, for the moment when the Empire would learn the truth of what it meant to face humanity. The alien guards dragged the human soldier through another wide corridor of the ship, the walls glowing with strange patterns that pulsed like veins of light. Alien banners hung above their heads with symbols of conquest stitched in dark colors. The air was filled with the sound of machinery and the heavy steps of armored boots. The chains on the human clattered with each step. Yet he walked with steady rhythm, his silence strong, his eyes sharp. And though the guards mocked him loudly, they did not see the way he studied everything around him. The aliens believed he was broken. They laughed when he stumbled slightly on the uneven floor. They shoved him forward, calling him fragile and weak. One slapped the back of his head with a clawed hand. The others laughed even louder, their voices echoing to the corridor like thunder. They thought humiliation was victory. They thought cruelty was strength. And this was their first mistake, for they mistook silence for weakness and calm for defeat, blind to the sharp mind working behind the quiet gaze of the soldier. They entered a large hall filled with more alien commanders, the room alive with glowing lights and humming machines. Strange creatures moved inside glass tanks lining the walls, trophies from other conquered worlds, and the commanders looked down at the human with cruel amusement, their voices loud and sharp, filled with mockery, calling him a primitive beast dressed as a warrior, calling humans nothing but fragile animals lost among the stars. Their arrogance filling the air so thick it seemed to choke the room. The soldier stood in the center, chains heavy, body bruised, yet his spirit burned steady. He did not fight. He did not resist. Instead, he watched, his eyes moving across every corner of the hall. He studied the weapons on the walls, the way the guards moved in formation, the rhythm of their laughter, the weakness in their pride. Each detail added to the silent map in his mind, each insult only sharpening his resolve. And though they believed him helpless, he was building his strength in silence. One commander rose from his seat and approached, his armor decorated with golden claws. He looked down at the soldier with a sneer and spoke loudly to the others, declaring that humans were unworthy of fear, declaring that this soldier was no warrior but a pet for their amusement. The hall filled with cruel laughter once again, the sound crashing like waves of arrogance. But the soldier lifted his eyes and met the gaze of Commander, his silence steady, his calm unbroken, and for a moment, the laughter faltered before returning, thinner than before. The commander wanted to prove the human was weak, so he ordered the guard to loosen the chains, not all of them, just enough so the prisoner could stumble forward. He wanted to show the others how fragile a human was when forced to move without support. The guards obeyed, laughing as they released some of the heavy bonds. The soldier swayed slightly as the weight shifted, but instead of collapsing, he stood taller, his shoulders straight, his gaze calm, and the hall grew quieter, though the aliens did not understand why. This was their first mistake made larger, for in loosening his bonds they revealed a crack in her arrogance, a small opening that the soldier stored away in his mind. He did not act yet. He did not reveal the strength hidden in his silence, but he felt the fire inside grow hotter, the moment drawing closer, the chains no longer absolute, the guards no longer untouchable, the Empire no longer as solid as it believed. Another guard stepped forward with a cruel grin, shoving the soldier hard across the floor. The chains rattled, the human stumbled, the hall roared with laughter. The commanders clapped their clawed hands in amusement, but when the soldier raised his head again, there was no shame, no fear, only calm eyes staring directly into theirs. And for a heartbeat their laughter faltered once again, though pride forced him to continue. The soldier remained silent, his breathing steady, his thoughts sharp. He remembered the words of his commanders on Earth, telling him that arrogance was always the enemy's first mistake, that pride blinded even the strongest, that patience was a weapon of the wise. And he carried those lessons in his heart, waiting for the moment when alien pride would open the path to their downfall. And here it was unfolding before him, mistake by mistake, arrogance stacking higher until it would collapse upon itself. The guard circled him now, taunting him, throwing words in human tongue, cruel phrases meant to cut. But the soldier did not flinch, he did not break, and the more they mocked, the stronger his silence became, the more hollow their laughter sounded. the more cracks appeared in the wall of their arrogance. Though they could not yet see them, though they refused to admit that something about this prisoner unsettled them. One young alien soldier whispered to another, asking why the human did not cry, asking why he did not beg, his voice low and uneasy, but the older guards silenced him quickly with a growl. Pride demanded they see the human as weak. Pride demanded they dismiss the silence. Yet unease had begun to creep like a shadow among them. A shadow they would not name, a shadow born from the calm gaze of one human chained before them. The commander ordered the guards to drag the soldier closer to the center platform, wanting the other commanders to see him better, to laugh louder, to mock deeper. The chains rattled as they pulled him forward. The hall filled again with cruel words and hollow laughter, yet the soldier walked with steady steps, his silence like a blade cutting through the noise, his calm like a storm gathering unseen. And though the aliens laughed, they felt the weight of something pressing against their pride. They pushed him down hard onto the floor, chains clanging, dust rising, laughter roaring once more. One guard leaned close and spat a cruel insult into his ear, but the soldier turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting the guard's glowing gaze. And for the first time the guard stepped back, unsettled, his laughter breaking, his pride shaken, and though the hall erupted again with sound, the unease had spread further, mistake upon mistake building higher, cracks growing wider, pride becoming weakness. The human soldier knelt in the center of the hall, chains heavy, body marked. Yet his spirit was iron, his silence unbroken, his mind sharp, and while the aliens celebrated their false victory, he waited, patient as stone, watching their pride grow taller and weaker, knowing that the higher pride rises, the harder falls. And the Empire had already taken its first steps toward that fall, blind to the storm they themselves had awakened. The alien hall was filled with cruel laughter, the sound bouncing from wall to wall like waves of thunder. Commanders clapped their clawed hands together, while guards circled the human soldier who knelt in chains. They believed the show of mockery was victory. They believed the silence of the prisoner was defeat. Yet beneath their pride, something invisible began to stir, something that none of them were willing to name. For inside the eyes of the soldier, there was a storm rising. One of the guards stepped forward with a grin sharp as blades. He reached out and shoved the human hard, forcing him flat to the ground, chains rattling as he hit the cold floor. The aliens roared with laughter, the hall shaking with the noise. Yet when the soldier lifted his head, there was no shame, no fear, only calm eyes staring back at them, and that gaze cut deeper than any weapon, making the laughter sound thinner than before. The guard expected cries of pain, expected curses or begging, but instead the soldier smirked ever so slightly. The faint curve of his lips carried more weight than words. The hall froze for a breath, the laughter broken, unease crawling like a shadow across the chamber. The commanders looked at each other, uncertain why such a small gesture unsettled them, yet pride forced them to laugh again, though their voices cracked at the edges. The soldier pushed himself up slowly, steady despite the chains, his body scarred but strong, his breathing calm, and he stood tall once more in the center of their pride, the silence heavier than before, the calm more powerful. The commanders whispered to one another now, wondering what this human was, why he did not break, why he did not fear. They spoke of fragility, yet felt the weight of steel in his presence. Another guard, angered by the unease, rushed forward and kicked the human hard, expecting him to fall. But the soldier stayed balanced, his eyes never leaving the aliens, his silence burning like fire. And once again the hall grew quiet, for in that moment the mockery no longer felt like victory. It felt like weakness exposed. It felt like their strength was slipping against something they could not see. The leader slammed his staff against the ground, sparks of light bursting upward. He shouted at the others to remember their pride, to laugh louder, to mock deeper, to crush the human with humiliation, and the hall obeyed, voices rising in forced cruelty. Yet the soldier only smirked again, calm and steady. And this small act broke the mask of their arrogance, for the laughter no longer rang true. It trembled like glass ready to shatter. The guards grew restless, some glancing at one another, their claws twitching on their weapons. Pride told them to laugh. Fear told them to stay silent, and the clash of both made the chamber uneasy. The human soldier watched all of it with sharp eyes, his silence a mirror reflecting their weakness back at them, every insult making them smaller, every strike making them weaker, every laugh breaking into something hollow. The commander nearest to him stepped closer, his golden armor gleaming under the strange light. He leaned down and whispered threats into human's ear, promises of earth burning, promises of humanity erased, promises of endless suffering. Yet as his words filled the air, the soldier turned his head slowly and looked directly into Commander's glowing eyes, silent, steady, calm, and the commander faltered, his words cut short, his pride shaken, his breath uneven. He stepped back quickly, covering the fear in his chest with a snarl. The hall erupted with forced laughter again, but the sound was weaker, strained. The commander spoke loudly of conquest, shouting of their empire's power. Tried to drown the silence of one human prisoner, but no matter how loud they shouted, the calm presence in the center of the hall grew heavier, pressing on them, breaking their arrogance piece by piece, until pride itself began to feel like a chain wrapped around their throats. Then the moment came when one guard made the mistake of drawing too close. He shoved the soldier with a clawed hand, laughing loudly, leaning forward with arrogance, and the human smirked again, his silence turning sharper, and the guard froze, his laughter stuck in his throat. He felt something in those eyes, something that no prisoner should have, something that spoke of storms and battles and victories carved from pain. He stepped back quickly, and others noticed, their unease growing like fire spreading through dry wood. The commander shouted again, ordering the guards to push the human harder, to break his silence. But the harder they tried, the stronger the silence became. The more unsettled they grew, the more the hall filled with shadows of doubt, and the soldier simply stood tall, calm, scarred, chained, yet unbroken, and with each moment his presence grew heavier, his silence sharper, his calm stronger, until the empire itself seemed smaller around him. The aliens had believed mockery would crush him. They had believed pride would blind him. Yet it was their pride that blinded themselves, for they could not see the storm forming in the quiet. They could not see the fire growing behind his eyes. They could not see that their laughter had already begun to turn against them. They had made their first mistake, and now their second. They had lowered their guard not with weapons but with arrogance, not with chains but with laughter, and the soldier had taken all of it into his silence, sharpening it like a blade waiting to strike. The hall was quieter now, though voices still shouted, though laughter still rang. It no longer carried the same weight. The commanders looked at one another with unease. The guard shifted nervously, and in the center the human soldier stood tall, calm, steady, his silence louder than thunder, his calm stronger than their pride. And though they did not yet understand it, the unexpected turn had already begun, and nothing could stop it now. The chamber of the alien stronghold trembled with forced laughter, yet every echo carried less pride and more fear for the human soldier, who had stood in silence, now moved, and his movement was enough to draw every eye in the room. The chains around his wrists clinked like whispers of warning. The commanders straightened on their thrones, trying to mask their unease with loud shouts, yet their voices cracked with sound that betrayed the weakness rising within their hearts. The soldier shifted his weight forward, his body scarred, but unbroken, his eyes burning with something the aliens could not name. The guards stepped closer, their weapons raised, claws twitching. As their pride battled with fear, one guard lunged first, trying to shove the human down. But the soldier twisted his chain arms, and with a sudden surge of strength, he pulled the guard forward, using the chain itself to hook around the alien's neck. The hall erupted with gasps as the guard was dragged to the ground, choking. The silence that followed was sharper than any blade. The commander shouted orders to attack, but the guards hesitated. None of them had expected the prisoner to fight. None of them had believed a chained soldier could strike. Yet here he stood, pulling the weapon from the fallen guards, side his movements, fast, precise, unstoppable, even in chains of silence, broken only by the sound of iron and fire clashing in the chamber. Another guard charged, swinging a blade that glowed with alien energy, yet the soldier ducked low, letting the strike hit. Only the air above him would roar. He swung the stolen weapon across the guard's legs, dropping the towering alien to the floor. Cries filled the hall, not from the human, but from the Empire's proud warriors who now bled on their own sacred ground. The commanders demanded the others swarm him, but fear slowed their steps, and hesitation weakened their pride. The human soldier used every second of that hesitation, his body moving with the memory of battle, the chains no longer weakness, but weapons themselves. He swung them wide, striking the guard across the head with bone-cracking force. Another fell with cry, and the laughter of mockery was gone, replaced by fear and silence broken only by the clash of battle. The leader of the guard stepped forward, his armor gleaming gold, his weapon larger than the others. With fury, he shouted for silence and lunged at the human. The strike was fast, heavy, filled with rage, yet the soldier met it with calm, his chained wrists catching the weapon, holding it with strength that shocked even the leader. The two locked together, the soldier's eyes burning brighter, and in that locked moment the alien faltered for the gaze of the human. was not that of prey, but of a predator. With a roar, the soldier twisted, pulling the weapon free, and driving his shoulder hard into the leader's chest. The golden-armored alien stumbled backward, crashing into ground. Gasps echoed again. The commanders stood in shock. Their empire's pride, brought low by the one they had mocked. The human did not speak, yet his silence was no longer passive. It was louder than any cry. It was a silence of storms gathering, of fire rising, of history turning against those who thought themselves eternal. The guards tried again, rushing forward in a desperate way, but desperation could not defeat resolve. The soldier moved among them fast and sharp, every strike cutting through fear, every motion breaking pride. He fought not only with his strength, but with every lesson carved into his body, every scar a story of survival, every strike a reminder that humanity was not weak, not fragile, not broken. He was one man, yet he carried the weight of his people, the spirit of Earth itself. The chamber shook with the sounds of battle, alien bodies falling one after another, chains, slashing weapons, clashing cries, echoing to the hall. The commanders shouted for order, but their voices no longer carried command. Their voices were drowned in the storm unleashed by the human soldier, who now stood taller than ever. His silence replaced by power, his calm replaced by fire, and every alien in the hall now understood that the mockery had ended, and the price for it was only beginning. One commander tried to rally courage. He raised his staff high, lightning sparking across the chamber as he summoned power to strike down the human. Yet before the strike could fall, the soldier hurled his chain forward, wrapping around the staff, and pulling with unrelenting force. The commander stumbled forward, his pride stripped away. As he crashed to the floor, the staff clattering from his hand, the human caught it, and for the first time wielded the weapon of his captors against them. The staff glowed in his grip, its alien energy humming in the air, yet instead of breaking him, it bent to his will. The chamber filled with light. The guards stumbled back, shielding their eyes, and in that blinding moment the soldier struck, sending a wave of force across the hall that hurled aliens to the ground, their cries echoing like thunder. The commanders staggered back, fear clear in their eyes, as they realized the truth. The weapon they had mocked with had become his strength. The chains they had bound him with had become his tools. The hall they had filled with laughter had become his battlefield. The silence that followed was deeper than any before, broken only by the sound of heavy breaths and the distant hum of the weapon in his hand. The soldier stood in the center of the fallen hall, his body scarred, his chains still hanging, but his presence unshaken. The aliens no longer laughed, they no longer mocked. Their eyes wide, their pride shattered, their empire trembling before one human who refused to break. The leader of the commanders rose, his voice shaking as he shouted that this was not possible, that one human could not stand against the empire, that one prisoner could not defy the chains of destiny. Yet his words fell hollow even as he spoke them, for every alien in the hall had seen the truth with their own eyes. They had seen the human soldier rise from chains, they had seen their warriors fall, they had seen their pride turn to dust, and no words could hide it now. The soldier lifted the staff high, his eyes burning like fire. His silence no longer weakness, but power, no longer surrender, but defiance. The chamber trembled as he stepped forward. The guards too afraid to stop him, commanders too shaken to move. The storm had arrived, and it carried the name of humanity. And in that moment, the empire understood the cost of mocking a human soldier. It was not just pride that was lost, it was the certainty of their strength, the illusion of their power, the future of their rule. The soldier did not speak. He did not need words. His presence alone told the story. His silence shouted louder than thunder, his gaze carved deeper than any blade. And every alien in the hall knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The hall stood frozen, with smoke rising from the cracked walls and broken stones scattered across the floor as the human soldier stood in the center with chains hanging from his arms and the alien staff glowing in his grip. The commanders trembled in silence, their proud armor gleaming with fear. Instead of strength, the guards, who had once mocked him, now crawled back across the ground, their weapons slipping from their claws, their voices gone, and their eyes wide as the truth settled upon them. The soldier did not speak, yet his silence cut deeper than any blade. His breath steady, his gaze sharp like fire in the cold night. His chains rattled with every movement like drums of war. And the empire that thought him broken now bent under the weight of his defiance. The commanders tried to rise one by one, calling for courage, for order, for pride. But their voices shook, and their hands trembled, and even the echo of their words felt weaker than the heavy silence that wrapped around the chamber. The leader of the empire finally stepped forward, his cloak dragging across the stone floor, his crown of metal humming with alien energy. He raised his hand and declared that the human would bow, that no prisoner could ever defy the empire, that history would erase this insult before the sun rose again. Yet his words were met with nothing but the piercing gaze of the soldier, whose silence burned hotter than flame. The crown glowed with power as the leader called upon the ancient strength of his people, lightning striking down from the ceiling and filling the room with blinding light. The soldier stood unmoving, his chains glowing in the storm, his grip on the staff, firm as body scarred, but unshaken. The lightning crashed around him, but the man refused to fall. Every strike only carving deeper shadows across his form. The guards watched in disbelief as the human walked forward step by step through the storm, each footfall echoing like thunder across the stone floor. The leader roared with rage, pouring every ounce of his strength into the lightning, yet the soldier did not stop. When the distance closed, the soldier swung the staff forward. The alien energy surged not against him, but with him. The storm bent to his will. The lightning curved around his form, striking the walls, striking the floor, striking the throne itself, until the proud crown of the empire cracked and sparks scattered across the chamber. The leader staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief, as the staff was raised once more. The storm now silent, yet waiting in the grip of the one they had mocked, the one they had chained. The soldier brought the staff down upon the ground, and the chamber shook like the earth itself had awoken. Cracks spread across the stone pillars, fell dust rained from the ceiling. The thrones of the commanders split in two. The guards scrambled for cover, their voices rising with fear. But no one dared to rush forward, no one dared to strike at the human, who now stood as more than a prisoner, more than a soldier. He stood as a symbol, as a storm given form. The leader fell to his knees, his pride shattered, his voice trembling as he tried to claim that this was not the end, that the empire would rise again, that humans would still be broken. Yet his words rang empty, for every alien in that hall knew the truth. The human had already broken more than chains. He had broken the illusion that the empire was eternal. He had broken the belief that humans were weak. He had broken the laughter that once filled their halls, turning it into silence and fear. The soldier stepped closer, his chains dragging sparks across the stone floor, his shadow towering over the kneeling leader. The staff glowed brighter. With every breath, the silence grew heavier with every step, and the guards could not breathe their pride, could not hold their courage, could not rise. They saw only one man, one human, who carried the strength of a world within him, and in that moment they understood that nothing would ever be the same again. The leader raised his hands, begging for mercy, but mercy did not live in the silence of the soldier, for mercy had been taken when they mocked him. Mercy had been taken when they chained him. Mercy had been taken when they laughed at the suffering of his kind. The soldier lifted the staff high, and the light grew brighter, until the chamber itself seemed to fade into nothing but fire and shadow. The guards shielded their eyes. The commanders fell to the ground, crying out in fear, and the leader's voice vanished beneath the roar of power. When the light faded, the throne was gone, shattered into dust, the crown broken into pieces, scattered across the floor. The leader of the empire lay unmoving. The once proud hall now stood in ruins, cracks running through every wall, fires burning in the shadow silence, hanging heavy yet alive with the memory of what had happened. The guards dared not move, the commanders dared not speak, and the soldier stood alone at the center, chains, broken staff, glowing eyes, filled with fire and silence. The silence spread to the empire faster than any messenger, news carried not by words, but by fear. Every commander, every soldier, every ruler who heard the fall whispered the same truth, that one human had broken them, that one prisoner had turned chains into weapons, that one silent soldier had shattered the pride of the empire. Their laughter was gone, their certainty was gone, their future uncertain. The story of the mocked human soldier became legend, whispered in every corridor, spoken in every barrack, feared in every throne room. The soldier did not seek to speak nor to boast. His silence remained his greatest weapon, his presence his greatest power. He walked through the ruins of the hall, the eyes of every alien upon him, none daring to rise, none daring to stop him, for they knew that to strike against him was to strike against the storm itself. He walked through broken gates, under the sky filled with ash and smoke, his chains falling one by one, his scars glowing like marks of fire, and his silence carrying across the night. For every alien who saw him pass, the truth became carved into memory. Humanity was not weak, humanity was not prey, humanity was a storm, and no empire, no crown, no throne could erase that truth. Again the soldier vanished in the horizon, his figure swallowed by the shadows, yet his legend remained, his silence louder than thunder, his defiance brighter than fire, his victory carved not in words but in fear. And thus the fall of pride was written not in alien songs, not in alien history, but in silence and scars and chains broken and thrones shattered. For the day the aliens mocked a captured human soldier was the day their empire began to crumble, the day laughter turned to silence, the day pride turned to dust, the day humanity rose not with words but with unbroken silence.